The whole focal point of electric motorcycles, right, is charging. The perfect world is that you ride down to, what is it, 35% or something like that?
Yeah.
And I'm talking with additional Diginon chargers, right? You ride to 35%, you stop somewhere that has a charger, you grab a burger and a Coke, maybe a coffee, whatever, and you burn, let's say, 30 minutes, theoretically, and that should get you about 85%, right?
Yeah.
Up to about 85% on a 30-minute stop. And then you go back and you ride, right? Well, there's several different dynamics around that. One is, well, how far can I ride? Da 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 da. And yeah, I mean, it depends on the freeway speed. I get about 70 miles if I'm on the freeway, but that's pretty close to 0% already, right? So
Right.
let's knock that back, maybe 60 to 55 miles before I should get off the road and charge.
Yeah. But how much is that? How much did you just recharge in 30 minutes? Between 35 and 80%. Like, how far can that get you?
Yeah. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And then on let's say city roads, where you're closer to about 35 miles an hour, you can probably get about 100 miles before you need to stop and charge. And that's not even down to 0%, right? So how long does it take you to do 100 miles at 35 miles an hour, right? Stop and go traffic, etc. So you can be on the bike for quite a while. So a lot of people are concerned about, I don't want to just ride for 10 minutes and then get off and charge. So
Yeah, it could be 2 hours.
yeah, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm getting up there in age. I'm not as limber as I used to be. So anything over an hour, and I'm ready to stand up, walk around, get a bite, whatever. So there's that. There's the positive part about when I'm looking at my range versus how long I'm on the bike. Reasonably, you can get a good amount of time on the bike before you need to get off and charge. So unless you're trying to do like an iron butt challenge or something like that, there's really no complaints there. But let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say that I've planned my stops and I want to get a bite to eat and such along the way. Well, a lot of things come into play there. Where are you going to eat? Because you need a burger and a charge cord at the same time, right? Those don't always coincide, right?
If you have a Tesla, they usually do. Right next to the fancy restaurant.
Well, I don't have a Tesla plug, nor do I have a Tesla. But here's the thing: a lot of, I'm going to say like Walgreens. That we're just going to use Walgreens as a placeholder, right? You don't have a lot of gas stations that have charge points. A lot of restaurants still don't have charging stations, etc. So you've got to find the infrastructure, right? Which I talked about a few minutes ago when I went out to Mount St. Helens. That just doesn't exist. So you can have all the chargers you want on the actual bike, but if the charge stations don't exist in your area, that's going to create a huge issue.
Yeah.
Right? And you can plug into a 110 with the factory stuff anywhere, but who's going to sit around for even 5 hours, right? Because you might get to a single station and it's in use. It may not be working.
Yeah.
You may count on having dub-J or 2 J ports to plug into the 3 chargers. You get there and there's only a single station, or again, one of them's in use, etc. So it's not always the best case scenario. So you've got to factor that in, because maybe you've now got to run another 10 miles to the next charging station. Well, where's your battery percentage at? That kind of thing. Grabbing a burger or whatever takes you 30 minutes to eat. But if you've got to stop every, let's say, 60 miles, where does that put you when you're riding with your buddies?
Yeah.
Right?
They're
How
also
often are we going to stop and eat?
Yeah.
You might have like a bio break, which is going to the restroom or whatever. But I guess that kind of brings me to another one of my points, is when you buy an electric motorcycle, unless you're strictly riding by yourself or riding with people who have electric bikes and nothing but, you're becoming the burden on your buddies. Right, so when you buy an electric motorcycle, it's not just your decision as far as like, hey, it's only going to affect me and nobody else is going to have to deal with it. You've got to plan your charging stops, and if everybody else is on a gas bike, how fair is that? I mean, what's the dynamic? Like, do your buddies like to stop and take pictures a lot? Do they like the video, do selfie sticks and all that stuff? So maybe it's not an issue because you stop more frequently than you charge anyway. Or are these dudes like going on long distance rides and asking them to stop for the charge and take the time that it takes to charge puts a damper on their ride. Is that fair to them? And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from buying an electric bike, but this is a real element that a lot of people don't even think about until they're actually in the situation, and they're out on the ride and they're having a blast, and then they get to the charger and the charger is either broken, or it's not working, or it's tripping because it's pulling too much power, or again, it's just being used at the time, so they got to go to a different station. It's complicated. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. It adds complications, and nobody can predict that type of thing because, I mean, let's be honest. There's no way to do that.
Well, yeah, you can go on PlugShare and look up a charger, and then once you get there, it might be closed or it might be.
Here's an interesting one that happened to me. My credit card is not a tap to pay. I do have a Blink Network membership, so I have that card. But I found that in my area, the Blink Network is not prevalent, or how do you say that? It's not dominant.
Right, yep.
So ChargePoint is, which is fine, except for when I discovered this, I'm out in the wild. I don't have a tap-to-pay credit card, so I can't use a universal pay method, and I don't have the proper membership card for the ChargePoint. So then you've got to ask yourself, am I carrying 2 or 3 different membership cards for different types of chargers? Am I using a tap-to-pay? What's the deal? So it's not always readily available. Yeah. So you gotta know all this stuff ahead of time, and that's, I mean, it's not common knowledge. I'm gonna say it's not a topic of conversation that comes up very often.
Yeah. So we're in Washington at the moment in the U.S.
Yes.
But this is in this state. It seems like AC charging is a lot like New Zealand, where it's just kind of a mess. Sometimes you need cards, sometimes you don't. Most of the time, it's not enough power. And then if you have DC, it's a whole other thing. You need a whole other little fob to make it work. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, in the year 2018, it still feels like we're early adopters, even though we've had our bikes a couple of years.
Yeah, what's the deal? I thought by now it would be all sunshine and rainbows, but that's not the case, right? Charging is important, and we need to be able to charge where we go.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too, yeah. If you have a bike that charges really fast, you need a place to charge it really fast, because plug it into the wall, you can only get what the wall provides, which is usually
a kilowatt.
1 kilowatt. And
just a hair over.
Right now, the Tesla is charging at 1 kilowatt, and it's taking forever.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things that could really improve the uptick of adopters is DC fast charging.
Oh yeah, that's a must.
Yeah. I mean, on both the bikes themselves and the charging infrastructure, because here's the way I had to explain it to one of my really good friends who was not really aware of why I bought the DigiNows, and he was like, "Well, I don't get it. Why did you buy the DigiNows superchargers when you already have the bike?" And I said, "Well, because the DigiNows, charge at a faster rate than the factory provided onboard charger. It's a good thing I have them because the onboard charger died." Blah blah. He goes, "Well, why does it still charge really slow when you plug it into the outlet then?" I said, "Well, because the outlet can only supply so much juice to the chargers." And I said, what I really need to do is buy a wall mount J station to plug the bike into. And he goes, "But you already have the DigiNows. Why do you need that?" And I said, well, okay, think of it this way. And I'm going to disclaimer that this is not a direct translation, but this is a good visual aid to think about for a mental picture. The DigiNows are the gas tank. Kind of, because they put the juice from the charger into the battery, right? So I know, again, that's why it's not a direct translation, but if you think about the DigiNows as a gas tank, that's where you put the gas, right? Because it keeps the battery. Which would be the battery. Let's look at the battery as the engine or the carburetor on a gas bike. So the DigiNow is where you put the gas, and it feeds the carburetor, right? So that's how that element works. Well, you still got to put the gas in the bike from somewhere. Where do you go? You go to a gas station, right? You put in the gas nozzle from the gas pump. So the wall mount or the J station is your gas pump. And you would still need to pump the gas into the DigiNows or the gas tank so they can feed the carburetor. And that's one element that also doesn't get talked about. Because you can buy all the DigiNow superchargers in the world, and if you're still plugging into a 110, you're going to get let's call it a trickle charge, right? You're going to be at 1 kilowatt.
Yep.
That's another element that a lot of people are still oblivious of. They don't have that education.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that a lot of people should know, is that um, that matters, because again, if you're at home plugging into 110, even if you have like a charge tank, I mean that 110 is not going to do you a whole lot of good. Or if you're out in the charging world, the chargers, the J stations. Let's stick with that because that's the only thing I have knowledge on. Some of them put out as high as almost 7 kilowatts, right? A lot of the ones that I encountered out in the wild on my runs trip after 5 kilowatts. So if I had the two DigiNows pulling a capable, or a potential is the better word, potential 6.6 kilowatts, they were tripping the J stations at 5 kilowatts. So as long as I had the DigiNows configured to never pull more than 5 kilowatts, it would not trip. So that's why it's important, because the gas pumps out there all flow the same. You know, I mean, as far as we can tell, you pull up to the pump, and you put the nozzle in the car, and you squeeze it.
Yeah.
It fills your tank up in, let's say, 2 minutes, right? If there is a variation in the flow there, it's so negligible that we don't pick up on it. So that's I think something that nobody really thinks about, is not only is the bike a huge role in how fast it can charge, but it's how much juice you got providing, right? Yep. So again, you tell somebody, yeah, the sticker price on the bike is this much, then you spend a couple grand or $3,000 on aftermarket chargers. Well, now you're still looking at anywhere from $500 to $800 for the wall mount, and then having an electrician come in and install that, unless you are an electrician, etc. So it's hard to justify that to somebody who can just go to a pump and $20 later they got another couple hundred miles. You're in too close proximity.
I haven't said anything in a while. I'm not sure how to talk. All right, so what we're going through right now is that when you go to a normal gas pump, you just put the pump in the filler cap hole or whatever, and you just pump gas. But with this, it's like you pull up and you have to go to a certain gas station where it has a certain pump, or the nozzle is a shape that fits into your bike. And so if you pull up and you try to fit the nozzle into your gas tank and it doesn't work, you're kind of like out of luck, and you have to find another station. So you have to like ride around, and or you have to find like 10 adapters and just.
So would you say that's kind of comparable to owning a car that runs on gas? I'm going to dumb it down here a lot, okay? Let's say your car can only accept gas from Chevron.
Right, exactly.
And you pull up to a gas station that has no signs up front, and you don't know if it's a Chevron, a Shell, a BP, Exxon, Arco, right? And then you have to get out of your car and go inside to pay, and they're like, "Oh, no, we're not Chevron, we're Shell." At that point, you got to get back in your car and drive to another gas station to find a Chevron, right? So I mean, again, that's not a direct translation. There's a lot of.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a very real concern. It is, because at that point, what do? Do you carry on a Shell card, a Chevron card, a Exxon card, and those would be your different adapters, right? Or I don't know, where are the other options? I'm going to go one step further, I think, and I'm going to say, when we talk about DC charging needing to be more available on the bikes for charging, for those of you who are even vaguely familiar with racing, Formula One, NASCAR, whatever, they have the race fuel refillers.
Oh yeah, the big dual nozzle thing.
Yeah, right.
Like,
and it's a high speed thing where the cars pull in, they get up on the jacks, and they change the tires, and this one guy comes running over with all this fuel, and he's like, right into the car, and it's like a super flow system.
Yeah.
Where they get just gallons in a matter of seconds. It just almost rockets into the car. And then you have your regular gas pump out on the street for regular people to walk up and take like 2 minutes to fill up a whole tank, Maybe sometimes 3 minutes, 5 minutes if you've got a big truck. So that would be the difference between using AC charging at a regular gas pump versus DC charging. DC charging, that's hard to say, with the race fuel filler, right?
Yeah.
So if you had more bikes that were capable of charging at a faster rate, then how long does it take to charge? Wouldn't really be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, even charging for like 15 minutes is almost negligible.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's important. So all you bike manufacturers out there that are listening, we do want that. So make it happen.
Yep. But we also need more DC charging stations. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's of course that's very important, right? Because you can have a Ferrari, but if you've got nowhere to open it up, then what's the point?
Yep. What's the point?
What's the point? Yeah, I like it.